Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being. Welcome to the 229th episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. And January is all about heart and mind connection. It can be really tough during the winter to experience this kind of heart and mind connection. It can feel really difficult and really challenging. So this month, I've got some brilliant guests that are going to talk about how we can do that in various ways. And to join me today is the brilliant Andrèa Watts. Andrèa is the first specialist in coaching with collage and founded UnglueYou, which is trademarked her coaching business in 2012. Her passion for her subject stems from her belief that we are all creative and hold a wealth of untapped wisdom and intuition in our unconscious. Andrea's vision is to see the collage coaching technique used globally as a creative coaching tool for releasing people's potential. To enable this ambition, she delivers ICF and AC approved training for coaches on using her 3-stage framework, the Collage Coaching Technique, which is also trademarked. She guest lectures on coach psychology programs at several London universities, was honorary lecturer at City, University of London, and the Coaching in Context module lead at Birkbeck University. To further share her knowledge and passion for creativity and coaching, Andrèa authored Collage as a Creative Coaching Tool, a brilliant book, which I have read, a comprehensive resource for coaches and psychologists, published by Routledge in 2022. She's an experienced coach, facilitator, trainer, and speaker. In addition to her one-to-one coaching, her clients include Google, Imperial College London, Moët Hennessey, the United States Air Force, and Jenny Garrett, Global OBE. So Andrèa, a huge welcome to the show.
Thank you, Layla. I really appreciate being invited along to talk to your listeners on your Diverse Minds podcast.
Well, we're delighted to have you. And I just read out your bio. And as I also all my guests, I think it's really great if you could tell listeners what you're working on at the moment.
You know, when you asked that question, my first thought was, I'd love to say nothing. Because I'm always working on something. So there are a few things I'd just like to share. So one of them is, I deliver training for coaches on using the technique that I use, coaching with collage, and I'm developing a training module on working with groups, because many of them come and they want to use it with groups. So I just wanted to add this to the existing accredited training, so they've got more resources and they know how to introduce it practically. So that's quite time consuming, but that's fine. And also knowing how do I actually do this in a way that's going to be engaging. It's going to be one of those where I'm not present. It'll be like a video. So that's challenging, but also rewarding. And also for the skills-based coaches, I'm just finalising a membership website for them as well. And then probably the other couple of things I'd just share is something that I've actually finished contributing a chapter to a new book's coming out on using creativity in coaching. And there's going to be about 20 contributors, and it's been edited by lecturers from the UEL. So I think it's going to be a really great resource once it's available. And the last thing is around ongoing website development. I mentioned the training, but I also do one-to-one coaching. And I just wanted to make sure there's a really good path for people who are interested in that. So, but that one's quite good because I can pass that one on to my website developer to do. So they're the kind of like key things that I'm working on at the moment.
Yeah, and it's hugely exciting because, of course, I'm one of your trained. I've done my part 1. I'm about to do my part 2 with you. And I was very captivated by this process of collage and coaching. And I don't think of myself, I kind of feel like a stifled artist, like I wish it was there coming out, but I've always done papercraft. So I know you've written about it in your book, but I'd love us if you could say a little bit about how you became a coach who uses collage.
That's such a great question. And I always want to almost like flip it around, because what happened was I was a collage artist who became a coach rather than the other way around. So I've always loved collage, always been my favorite medium. And when I studied it into higher education, I would lean towards using collage whenever we were asked to do something, including live paintings. I'm like, can I collage it? And then I did an art therapy foundation course, and that lasted a year. And again, we worked with lots of different art experiences. But for me, it was always collage. When given a choice, that is the direction I'd head in. And so when I came to coaching, I found myself leaning towards collage, and two things kind of really pushed me to decide to do it. One, I saw a careers coach, and she talked to me about doors opening, because I kept mentioning it, and she said, go away and draw it. And when I drew it, it just didn't speak to me at all, Layla. So I created a collage, and it had such a profound impact on me. It really shifted things. And I'd already been using the process in groups, and I knew the impact and outcomes it was having for them. So between those two things, and it being my first love anyway, as I went into coaching, I was like, let me bring the art into that space. Let me bring the collage into that space, because I know it can be useful in the coaching profession.
Yes. So that's the other way around for many of us, I think, which is why, your work and your training is so important. And building on that, what does the term well-being mean to you?
Again, there's a pause there, because I think, we hear that word well-being, don't we? And we think we know what it means. And then when you go to articulate it, it's like, actually, yeah, what does it mean? And so I had a real think about this. And for me, there really is this integration of our physical, our spiritual, our emotional, our psychological, and also understanding that they are not independent parts of ourselves, but they are codependent. And when we're able to allow them to flow, where there's a rhythm between them, where we notice how one informs and influences the others, I think when we do that, then we're able to move to a place where our well-being, how do I describe this? Where we're more attuned to our well-being, when we can more understand, what does well-being look like for me? What does it feel like? Because it's so personal, right? I think it's deeply personal. And when you are aware, when you have that self-awareness of what well-being looks and feels like for you, then you can be intentional about moving away from those things that diminish and de-energize you, and moving towards those things that uplift you and make you feel better. And there's something in there, because I appreciate, stuff happens externally, doesn't it, that we can't affect. What we can do is affect our responses. And I think there's something there about, you will have heard the phrase self-care, but I think there's something about that self-care, that self-compassion, that being kind to yourself in this shifting landscape of our well-being. And I think at the core of that is loving ourselves. So I think well-being is often maybe more complex than we realize. But yeah, for me, the key thing is about that codependence of these different aspects of ourselves, that we like to separate them, but actually they all influence each other, and we can tune into that.
Yeah, I think that's hugely helpful. I've never heard it be described as a codependency, because you normally hear codependency as being quite a negative thing, codependent relationships. But what you're saying in that integrational piece and around the codependency of all the parts of ourselves, I think is hugely helpful. And that builds, on my next question, which is, how does collage connect both heart and mind? How does it do it? And I know you've got a lot of research, you talk about it in your book, and there's the principles of it, and there's also what you've seen in the practice space.
Yes, indeed, definitely. So I'm going to kind of start with the principles of it, and it is like an overview. But the process of collage as an art form and as a coaching tool always creates connections anyway. That's one of the biggest values of collage. But if we're thinking particularly about the heart and mind, one of the things that happens is when people use the collage coaching technique, the first thing they're guided to do is to gather images that resonate with them. And as you'll know this, Layla, as you said, you've experienced it. But when you do that, you're actually allowing your intuition to be heard. And your intuition is about your feelings, a very feelings-led process. So essentially, that's more aligned to the heart space that we talk about. Then, as you move through to the creating and the storytelling phases, you're then working more with the cognitive, the kind of rational thinking mind leads. And it's doing that because you're enabling the making of meaning of what the images are saying to you, the insights, perceptions, depending where they're positioned, depending on the color, the white spaces, all of this holds meaning. And this is where, the mind's like, but why? Why is that there? So you lead with the heart, and I'm using your language. So leading with the heart, getting that material from the unconscious through the intuition, how it feels, then on to the connection of, okay, this image came up, but what does it mean? It came from my heart, what does it mean? Secondly, the collage also allows you to see and experience, again, this is similar to what I was saying about well-being, but the heart and mind, our emotions and our rational thinking, again, they inform each other. I think even more so in terms of our emotions and our cognition, we separate them. We live in a society that says, no, don't bring your emotions to work, but actually our emotions are really, really important. They are a valid source of information, and they can inform our decision making, including concerning our well-being. And so I think, again, what the collage does, because in front of you on the paper, you can see the heart-mind connection. You can see all kinds of different connections, not those two, but you can see all kinds. You can see that they coexist. They can and do coexist in space. And so it helps you to recognize that, oh gosh, what I feel also affects what I think affects what I feel. And I can see it, because normally it's just rattling around in your head, isn't it? And it's very thinking basis in your head. But having it out really helps that connection. And again, that codependency.
Yes, and I've experienced it a lot, and I did some art therapy where I looked at certain things, which was obviously different to coaching with collage, but we used collage as the technique, and it's surprising because you think, I know what it is, I know how I'm feeling, but that intuition piece, and when I did the skills part 1 with you and the colleagues that we worked with, it's so interesting having someone reflect back as well what they can see in your collage. That was very powerful. So for many workplaces, this might feel very, and I don't think this at all, but woo-woo, out there, weird. Why are we doing this? This is a workplace. This is not an art class. But we know that the benefits are so great. And having used it with people on away days, I have seen the changes in teams. So what do you think workplaces can do to introduce collaging into team building practices, team meetings, and team dynamics?
I think, Layla, when you started there, I thought that's really insightful about how organizations can see it. And that's where I want to start, actually, is how do we break down those barriers so that people understand it for what it actually is? That it's actually a really powerful tool for reflective practice, for raising self-awareness, for disrupting those familiar approaches that can get not just individuals, but teams stuck, how it can shift behavioral patterns. So there's something for me I've talked about, that people need to be aware of how to introduce it in a safe and supportive way. So I wouldn't actually encourage people to just jump in. I would say you need to understand the process, because it is really powerful. You are working with the unconscious. There's ethical considerations there. But also, if you understand how it works, you'll also understand that there are multiple outcomes. You talked about team building, but it can also be used for creating a vision, for strategic planning, for change management. And when you understand the process and the outcomes, then you can see how you can use it in your organization. Now, you talked about, this is an art. And actually, one of the things I said, it's on my website, this is not about art. And even when people are creating their collage, I'm like, it's not about art. It is an arts-based method, but it's not about art. So what it looks like doesn't matter. Also, I'm really keen to not use the language of, it's going to be fun. That's not what this is about, right? Going back to the reflective practice tool, you'll feel challenge preconceived ideas and behavior patterns, both at a collective and an individual level. It also allows for that open and honest dialogue and discussion that enables teams, large and small teams, to reach consensus, or if not a consensus, at least a better understanding of each other. And I think there's something incredibly valuable about that. And you spoke about how you've used it with teams and the difference that you've seen. And people have messaged me on LinkedIn who've used it with teams. And one lady talked about, she was so amazed how willing people were to talk about their emotions because of the process. And that's why it's important to create that safe and supportive space. And it goes back to why we need to talk about our emotions, because they do affect how we behave. And so, to push them to one side isn't the best idea. So, I would obviously recommend reading my book. I'm talking specifically about the Collage Coaching Technique, because it will give anybody who's interested in using it an insight into creativity, an insight into the neuroscience, which can really help staff who are skeptical. Because I do understand why people would be. And so that's why I've written about it in such ways that you understand there's more. It looks simple on the surface, it looks childish, but it is not. It is a psychological tool.
And I think it's fascinating what you said about it's not fun. So the primary aim is that it's not, it's not fun. It's not something that's trite. Actually, it's there's a longevity to it, and because I do find the process really fun. But I think you're right, when you start to talk about it, it's really deep diving into reflections and insights. So that's important. I think it can be fun. I think you can not sell it, but I think we can pitch it as both, can't we? Reflective, fun, rooted in neuroscience and psychological behavior.
So I use the language of enjoyable instead of fun. And I think back to that point when you use the word trite, because for many people fun is trivial. But if I use enjoyable, it holds that same, yes, while you're doing it, you will enjoy it. It's those nuances of language, isn't it?
Yes, and we know how important language is.
Yes.
So, Andrea, you're an incredibly busy person. You have your business, you have a book, you do so many things. It's really great. I'd love to hear from you. How do you look after your own mental health, and what are your top 3 tips that you want to share with listeners?
Okay, yeah, what I'd like to share with your listeners is first, and this may be very familiar, and it's this idea of practicing mindfulness. But what I wanted to add is, the reason I say this is because it allows you to slow down. Mindfulness allows you to slow down. It allows you to notice. So when I was talking about well-being and how these different parts of ourselves interact in this codependency, what mindfulness does is it allows you to notice that. And I'd just like to share a quick example. For example, sometimes my stomach feels so crampy. And when I was younger, I used to think it was something I was eating. It was not something I was eating at all. It was anxiety. And it wasn't until I got older and I did a mindfulness practice. I actually studied mindfulness for 8 weeks that I realized, oh my goodness, my body is trying to tell me something. And now I can tune into that. And the mindfulness helps with that. It allows me to tune into all forms of my knowledge. So what I wanted to add is people think mindfulness is just about meditation. Well, some people think it is, understandably, because again, the way it's presented, it comes across as, you sit there going, oh, something like that. But it's not. Mindfulness can be so many things. My mindfulness practice involves walking, mindful walking in the woods. Some people call it forest bathing. That's the kind of name it's used. But I just call it mindful walking. And I also bring along my camera because I love photography. So it means I pay attention. So I like micro. So you get really macro where you get really, really, really close. And so again, that kind of brings me into a space where I'm very focused. I'm in a state of flow. So yeah, I'd say find your mindfulness practice, whatever that's going to look like for you, because you will slow down and you will start noticing. And then my second one, which links to it, I talked about the camera and the photography, is, do something creative. For me, that's the photography, but also the collage, because when I do it, I'm using my hands, which I love to do. I'm getting really absorbed. You get into that state of flow where outside distractions recede and time seems to fly because you're totally absorbed in something. And for me, with the collage as well, it allows that reflection. So I'm like, okay, Andrea, what's going on? Do you need to shift something, change your behavior, whatever? But there's also lots of different ways to be creative. It doesn't have to be art-based. It can be gardening, it can be cooking, it can be Lego. And so what I'd really encourage your listeners to do is, if they don't know what their creative outlet is in terms of that, and you can have more than one, obviously, is to just play, try different things and see what sits with you, see what gives you that sense of flow and just forgetting what's going on and just being in the moment. And there's also lots of research that demonstrates the benefits of creativity and being in that flow state, because you're more at ease and relaxed, which makes your body, your heartbeat slows down and all of those good things. So that would be my point 2. So we've got mindfulness, we've got creativity. And my last point is about connecting with your spirituality. And I really appreciate this will look different for different people. And there's something about acknowledging that as well. And again, what does your spirituality feel like? Through coaching with Collage, many of my clients, and I literally mean probably 90% of them, at some stage in the process will talk about spirituality. Some have never experienced it, but think, oh, this is something through the collage that I'm feeling I'd like to explore. So I just really encourage people to do that. And the reason I say that is because for me, I'm a woman of faith. I believe in God. And I always say it's about relationship and not religion. But for me, that relationship is about feeling grounded and supported and connected in a very deep way. Not just to God, to myself as a result of that, and also to others. Even they may be part of my community, like-minded individuals, but actually just connected to other humans. And that improves my well-being. I know that idea of you and I, we are the same essentially, makes a difference. Yeah. So that would be my last point, just to encourage people maybe to consider and to explore what that might be like for them.
And the hairs on my back of my neck stood up when you said it's about the relationship, not religion. I thought that was so beautiful, and that really resonates with me. So thank you so much, and for all your tips. So Andrea, it's been an absolute joy to have you on the show. I love everything you do. I'm like one of your biggest fans. So if other people want to know more about your work and they want to work with you and find out more, how should they contact you?
Okay, there's 3 ways I'm going to share. The first is, just have an exploration, look at my website, which can be found at www.UnglueYou.co.uk. UnglueYou is one word, .co.uk. And I know you'll share that afterwards, Layla, so thank you. You can get me on email. I'm really quite happy for people to email me directly, and that's Andrea, Andrea, at UnglueYou.co.uk again. And finally, I only use one social media platform, so it's very simple. You will find me on LinkedIn. And again, Andrea, UnglueYou. If you put those 2 things, Andrèa Watts or Coaching with Collage, you will find me. So thank you. I do hope some of your listeners will be curious enough to get in touch.
Yes, and I will, of course, include those links in the show notes as well, in case you didn't catch that. So thank you so much for being part of our Heart and Mind Connection series. Really, really love this conversation. And yes, please reach out to Andrea, get in touch, have a look at her website. Her work is fantastic. Her newsletter is brilliant. So sign up and get involved, everyone.
Thank you, Layla. It's been a complete pleasure.
And we'll see you in the next episode, everyone, where we're going to be talking more about heart and mind connection. Until then, take care.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.